if you're here, you're probably wondering, how does a VTuber model work? Like, what is it made of? How does it function? And all that good stuff. So if you want to learn a bit about the back end, that's what this video is for. So basically what you're seeing right now is what's considered a VTuber model. It is actually a bunch of flat artwork that is just kind of animated and transformed to look 3D. This is not a 3D model. It is all flat PNG or a flat Photoshop document, and I'm going to go ahead and show you kind of like how that works. So the first thing that you need to understand is, how do these art pieces get made? So let's start by making a really simple example. So your first question would be, okay, how do I make a model? I downloaded VTube Studio, but how do I make a model in it? You can't. You don't make models in VTube Studio. You have to create them using a drawing software and then rig them in a software called Live2D Cubism. So let's start with making a model while my birds go insane in the background. Don't mind the crunchy noises they're making. So I'm just going to make a new document. It's recommended that you want to go about, you don't want to go more than 4,000 or 8,000 pixels. For now, I'm just going to do 3,000. That's kind of overkill for this project. So let's start with adding a new layer, and I'm just going to make a little blob dude. So actually, before I do that, let me kind of show you how these models look like a finished model. So this is a model that comes with VTube Studio. This is Wanko. It's a little dog and a little ramen bowl. So let's go ahead and actually see what art pieces this dog consists of, so that we'll kind of get an idea of what to draw. Okay, so for now we're going to find this actual model's files. So in the VTube Studio, where I have it installed, you don't have to install VTube Studio to make a model yet. I'm just showing you an example of if you wanted to look at the way one of the models is made, I can show you. So let's find Wanko VTS. And here we can open this file. This is his texture files. So if I open this image, this shows all of the pieces that make up this model. So, for example, we have the body here. Look, he's even got feet and a tail that we can't see from inside this bowl. Here's his ears. This must be his head. Here's his little hands, his little upper lip and mouth, his lower lip, his tongue, the little blushies. And then there's like some chopsticks and noodles and even this marking here that I actually don't see on the model. So that must mean that these pieces are used for an animation, because it looks like he has animation. Maybe an animation that picks him up out of the bowl. I'm not sure. But let's start making a kind of sample model similar to this so you can understand kind of how this works. So first, okay, so using my drawing software, I'm using Clip Studio Paint. You can use Photoshop, you can use GIMP, you can use Corel Paint, or whatever other software you want to draw in. You mainly just need to have access to what are called layers. So what is a layer? Assuming you're not an artist and you've never seen a layer before, oh my goodness, what's going on? Oh, I have two copies of that. So let me just delete these things here. So this is the paper. Clip Studio just kind of loads with a default background. So you'll notice, cool, there's a paper. That's like the background layer. I can add a new layer. I can do a vector layer, and I can do a raster layer. So let's do a raster layer real quick. And I'm going to just draw a circle. And now, if I hide the background, see this checkerboard? This checkerboard stuff here means that it's transparent. Pretend my handwriting's better. So what that means is I can also make another layer underneath it, and I can draw things underneath that layer. And because they're separate layers, I can move them around individually from each other, so it's not fused onto only one thing like it would be in real life with paper and charcoal or pencils. So let's start with a little guy. Let's make a little guy. I like to use what are called vector layers. And let me show you why. And this is a little bit of a tutorial on Clip Studio Paint specifically. I think Paint Tool Site also has vector layers. I like to use the G Pen, and I've created a vector layer. You can tell by this little cube. I like to use vector layers because if I draw, you know, let's say I'm like drawing a character's hair. And then I don't want to have to like go through and manually erase like this because it takes forever. So what you can do is, because this is a vector layer, because this little square says it's a vector layer, I can use my hard eraser, and I can click here that says vector eraser, and I can do the different types of, so like erase up to intersection. That's what I usually have mine set to, so that I can just like touch it here, boom, bam, wow, amazing. Another fun thing about vector layers is using this operation tool. This is kind of like your big mouse boy. I can click on object, so I can click on the object that makes up this line. I can move it around. I can go down here to the property. I can change the thickness. I can change the color. And the best part about vector layers is they are infinitely scalable. So let me do this. I'm going to name this one vector. I'm going to just duplicate it really quick, and I'm going to convert this to a raster layer. So this is going to be the raster. All right. So there are two things here. I've got the raster layer and now the vector layer. Now watch what happens when I, oh, it turns out maybe I drew it too small. Let me just like scale it up. If you look closely, see the little jagged edges? This is the raster layer. Whereas, come look at the vector layer. See how perfect and pristine it is? And then, if I try to use the object function, I don't have the option to change the line art thickness on the raster layer, but I still have that on the vector one. So that's kind of like a little example of why I use vector layers for line art. You don't have to. And one thing you can't do is you can't use the vector layers for like filling in swaths of color. So I really only use it for line art. So let's just make a little cat. And I'm going to use the symmetry ruler, which you can find down here. There's a ruler. So I'm going to use a symmetrical ruler. And I'm gonna, let's just draw a little cat. So I'm gonna do this. Let's just do like, no, I don't like that shape. Let's do like a bow bun. Maybe it's like a bow bun cat or a slime cat. I'm zoomed in too close. There we go. Now I can erase the intersecting lines. And what I like to do is I like to try to keep the line art separate, so I'm going to name this line art for now. And I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to go ahead and color it in. Let's make it kind of a bow color, so we'll make it kind of yellowish. And this is a raster layer, not a vector layer, because you can't use this fill tool. And then you can specify, I want to refer to other layers. So it's going to see this line art layer and all the other layers, and so when I click fill, it's going to be like, oh, you want to stay within that line art? Whereas if I do only editing layer, there's nothing on this layer. So if I try to fill it, it will fill the whole thing. So let's do refer to other layers, and I want to fill it here. So I'm going to just name this skin. And now let's give it some eyes. Let's just give it some really simple eyes. Actually, I'll go ahead and show you how to do like more detailed eyes. So when I'm drawing eyes for a Live2D model, I usually do something like an upper eyelid. Oops. Oh, I gotta change my line art color to black. And you can do it however you want. I'm gonna make just kind of a weird creature. There we go. So I like to do an upper eyelid and a lower eyelid. So I'm going to name this one upper eyelid, or upper lash. I'm going to name this one lower lash. I'm going to create another piece that's going to be the sclera. Sclera, that's the white part of your eye. And I'm actually going to make a folder. I'm going to put all of my eye stuff in this folder. So I'm going to just name this eye_parts. And when you're making a Live2D model, you want to avoid using spaces. You want to either do camel case, which is like something like this. So like capital E, lowercase y, and then capital P for parts. Notice how there's no space here, but you can kind of see that it's two different letters because of this is called camel case. Or you can do an underscore. But just don't use a space and don't use special symbols. Just only use, your basic English alphabet with an underscore or no underscore. So I'm going to leave this eye parts for now. I'm going to put my lower lash below here, my upper lash here. I'm going to make a quick eyeball. I'm just going to be really simple. So I'm going to make this red. This is going to be called eyeball. And then we can also make another piece for the skull, or for the pupil. How you draw your art is going to vary depending on like your art style and the look you want for your model. So if you want to like have like fancy eye physics, like when you blink, the highlight jiggles, the pupil kind of sways and can dilate and shrink. You'll want to draw each of those as a separate part. So pupil. And then let's say you wanted to add some shading up here. Let's say you don't want it to be flat. You want some shading up here. You could draw it on the sclera itself. So you could lock this layer and then you could, airbrush your shading on there. Or you can add a new layer and let's just draw the shadow. But oh no, it bleeds outside of the eye. That looks terrible. Well, we have this magic thing called clipping masks. So if I right-click my layer that I just made, there's usually a way you can clip it to, layer settings, clip to layer below. You can also do that fast by clicking this button. And so what does that do? Basically, it kind of like hides. So like, you see how all of that gradient that was outside of the white is now like clipped within the white. So I can move this around and it won't come out of the white area. Clipping masks do work in the rigging software, so clipping layers are your friend. So I'm going to name this Sclera Shadow. And let's do some eye or some mouth parts. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to name this Mouth Parts. And I'm going to draw. So like, a lot of people have a tendency to draw the mouth in a curved shape. Like, like, okay, it's smiling. But I also, I want this creature to be able to make like the O shape. So looking at the model that I'm currently using, Wanko, his mouth only opens. It just, only this part flaps up and down. He can't do mouth forms like a, I, U, E, O. His mouth is very basic. So if you want to be able to do the mouth forms, it's actually a lot easier to draw the mouth just straight because then, so for example, if I drew it, as a smile and then I'm trying to, okay, well, let's make it frown. Ugh. Oh my god. Like, see how, like, hard it is to make it look like a frown? Whereas, if I draw it as just a straight line... My roommates are laughing at something. I'm transform. This is a lot easier to curve into a frown. You would actually be able to like transform it. And if you have like, so if you want it to be a cat mouth like this, same thing, just start with a straight line. The straight line is the easiest to start from, so I'm just gonna use a straight line. I'm getting in this upper lip line. And then we want to make a little bit of an actual upper lip, just to kind of help hide the inner mouth. So I like to do something a little bit like this, and then kind of hide it under there. So it might look a little silly because it's pink right now, but I'll make it match the skin color, so you actually won't be able to see this piece. But I'm going to name this upper lip skin. And now let's do the same thing for the lower lips. And I'm actually just going to take this one and flip it vertically. And let's put it below. And then I'm just going to rename these layers. This is going to be lower lip line, lower lip skin. And let's color it to match the skin. There we go. Now I can also add, let's say you wanted to add like see how Wanko has a chin? Let's say you wanted to add maybe something like that, or you wanted to add, you know, some shading. You know, like, you know, in anime, how they'll kind of have the lower lip kind of, you know, shaded sometimes, kind of like that. Literally, you can just draw it in. And I would recommend to actually set it to a multiply layer. Oh, you can't see it because it's in a folder. Let me take this out of the folder real quick. So, what is a multiply layer? I use multiply layers for shading. That way, it's very versatile. I would just use multiply layers for shading if you can. And I'm actually going to change the color to maybe this light pink. So here we go. So like this is what, you know, this multiply color would look like if I just, you know, it's a normal layer. But watch, when I set it to multiply, see how it gets darker? This is perfect for like shadows. So if you wanted to add like a shadow to the lower lip, you can, or let's add a shadow to the skin. So like the body of this weird little dongo slime bun thing, let's just add some shading. And when you're shading, I recommend, it depends on the object, but if you want to be able to like animate the shadow, draw a little bit of extra on the outside, because you can always just clipping mask it in there. But then, like, if I'm, you know, transforming it and it's like stretching weird, or it's like, see how like it doesn't have a sharp edge, so it's easier to kind of like blend in case something weird is happening while I'm rigging. So I'm going to do this as skin shadow, and I'm going to set it to multiply. And you can do the same thing for a highlight. So let's just put a little shiny highlight. And I'm just going to name this skin highlight. Oh, and my skin line art. For me, I don't really like the line art being black, so I'm going to change the line art to be kind of like a dark brown that kind of matches the skin. And I think I'm going to change the style of the eyes. This is just kind of a basic example of how you could draw like an anime eye. But let's do like a cute eye instead. So let's do... I don't know what kind of eyes to give this thing. I guess we'll just give it like Dragon Quest eyes. Let's just make it a Dragon Quest slime. Oops, I want a circle. So again, I'm going to create the line art for the eye. It's a little thin. Vector layer. Line art for the eye. And let's make that a bit thicker. Oh, I need to use my object thing, and then I can make it thicker. There we go. And let's make that... Let's copy the same color of the line art. There we go. Looks a little like creepy right now, but don't worry about it. And now let's fill this in with white. And this will be the sclera. Actually, let's make the sclera a little bigger. And for, you know, cartoony eyes like these, so let's say we wanted this thing to blink, right? It would be really hard to make this line art blink because, you know, like as I transform it, oh, let me remove this symmetry layer. Like as I transform it, see how it gets like really thin on the top and the bottom? So actually what I like to do for eyeballs like these is I'll make this like a solid object, so like this, and I'll name this like eye line, and then I'll have the sclera on top, and then I can, you know, I can transform the sclera. So let's put some, let me put some pupils in here really quick. So here's the pupil layer. Let's make a new layer, and we'll also make one for the highlight. I'm going to name this highlight layer. So, again, clipping masks are your friends. So let's say I want to make this whole thing blink. The easiest way to do that, I'm just going to duplicate it so I don't accidentally mess it up, is actually taking the sclera, and let's make, you know, the sclera shrink. And we do want to make sure that the pupil and the highlighter clips to the sclera. And then I can also shrink this eye line here. I can leave it a bit thicker. And then in the Live2D software, I can change the layer order. So by default, I want this to be above, but then in Live2D, I can make that below. So then it will like kind of blink like this. But that's something that I'll go into more detail later. Let's erase this eye, because in Live2D, you can mirror your items. So I only draw like half of the model. So we have the mouth parts. I want to make the mouth a little thinner. And I need to make it the same color as the line art. And make sure that the upper skin is still there. I want the upper skin to kind of end in the middle of that. All right, there we go. Now let's also make an inner mouth. For the inner mouth, I will usually just draw like an O shape, kind of like this. Like the mouth is open, or sometimes you can do kind of like this shape. Just something that kind of indicates, or sometimes you could do like that shape. Just something that kind of indicates that like you need to draw the interior of the mouth as if it had no lips. So let's do that. So I'm just going to name this inner mouth. And I'm going to make it a dark red. And let's also give this little guy a tongue. I don't really care to make this model be able to stick its tongue out, so I'm just going to do a basic anime tongue, which is literally just like an oval like this. And you know, you can do shading, you can add line art, whatever you want. So I'm going to name this tongue. Let's clip that in there. And if you want to do teeth, same thing. I probably won't do teeth for this creature because it's a slime. I think it would look weird with teeth. But you would want to draw, you know, like maybe this. So like here's some fangs. meep, like this. So this will work. You can also do, so I would name this like upper teeth, and then lower teeth. Well, I guess I'll give it teeth since I've drawn them. And you can like add shading, add line art, all that good stuff. I'm not gonna bother because this is just a model example. So lower teeth. And again, we can just clip these to your model. And then let's put the lips on top. Oops. Put the lips on top, thank you. Here we go. So it looks a little silly right now because like the mouth is wide open, but then the lip is here. But that's fine because it's easier to shrink this mouth and make it closed than it is to try and take a closed mouth and make it open. So let's just do that. I'm gonna give him, that's his eye parts. I'm gonna give it an eyebrow. So I'm just gonna name this brow. Or brow underscore L because it'll be the left side, but then I'll have to rename it, you know, on the other one. And then let's give it some little blushies. So let's name this blush. And I think that's good for now. I'm going to delete the paper. And I'm going to go through and make sure all of my layers are named. And that none of them have spaces. So like, what is this layer? There's nothing on this layer. Let's just delete it. What's this? Anything on this layer? No, let's just delete it. Blush is there. Eye parts, we have the brow, the highlight, the pupil, the sclera, and the eye line. Mouth parts, we have the upper lip line, the upper lip skin, lower teeth, upper teeth, tongue, inner mouth. And we have line art for the body. You can just leave the line art like this. So like notice how there's like nothing filled in the back. I like to kind of fill it in the back though. And then I'll put the line art behind my model. It really just depends on like the kind of style or creature you're rigging. So I'm actually going to do this. And I'm going to put it under the skin. So it looks like line art. Because it's just a little bit bigger than my object. And I think that'll work great for this project. So let's save our little guy. What file do we save this as? We need to save it as a Photoshop document. So let's do File, Save As, and I'm going to do Photoshop Document. That's PSD. Let me make a new folder real quick. I'm going to name him Dongo. No, I'm going to name him Bun Thing. And then I'm going to name my... So here's his folder, Bun Thing. I made a folder for him, and I'm just going to name this Bun Thing. And I actually like to name, like, this is the Live2D file. That way you can keep your, like, working project file separate. This one's simple enough. I don't need to keep the working file separate because I've just drawn it simply. But let's say, like, you were shading the hair really detailed, and you want to keep all, like, the layers and stuff of the hair, just in case you ever need to, like, edit it or something before you merge the hair. Yeah. So let's save our Bun Thing, Live2D. And now let's open our Live2D software.